Hi, so this is for discussion number 1. Firstly, I'm going to talk about what impacted me from the introduction and first few chapters of My Grandfather's Blessing. And I'm enjoying this book so far. I like that she set the chapters up as stories that she learned from her grandfather. And she describes her grandfather as someone who is very spiritual and very wise and that she learned a lot from. She really seemed to have a special relationship with her grandfather compared to her other family members who were very logical and academic based in science and the medical profession. And so as she grew up, I thought it was interesting. She said she felt caught between her grandfather's views on life and science, which is what her other family members were really into. And so I think this is something that really brings up the art of medicine. People say that medicine is not just a science, but it's also an art. And I think the things she learned from her grandfather really helped her master this art of medicine and really enable her to bring it into practice in her career with her patients. She goes on to say that we often don't realize how blessed we are in our lives, that we're just so busy, that we have all these blessings floating around that we don't recognize. But that sick people have the opportunity to recognize how blessed they really are, and they look for the blessings, both big and small, in their lives. And so I think that really ties into healthcare as a rewarding profession, and that since we have the opportunity to work with these patients in such an intense time in their lives, that it should remind us to just slow down or just be mindful during our interactions with them to look for blessings. And I think this is also an opportunity for self-reflection, that after each patient or after the end of a hard day, just to take a few moments to reflect back on what was meaningful to us during that day. Moving on to the video of Rachel and the talk she did. I thought it was interesting that she didn't have slides, and I like that she said she was a storyteller. And I think that was fitting because her grandfather was also a storyteller, and that all the lessons she learned from him were from the stories he told. And so what impacted me from this talk, especially in regards to how to make healthcare whole, she talked a lot about how we as humans can make the world and life whole, and she didn't directly say anything about the field of medicine, but I think it's directly applicable. And she said that every person is a healer of the world according to the Kabbalah, which is what her grandfather studied, and it is in human nature to serve, which I think makes sense, especially since we were all called to the healthcare profession, and that you really are there to serve your patients. Something else that really struck me was that she said you can bless the life of someone without even realizing it, and she mentioned that in the story about her friend Elaine, who was in an abusive marriage and whose eyes were opened to that one day just from a stranger on the street saying something. And so that stranger probably didn't realize that, she changed Elaine's life forever and just, bestowed just such a huge blessing on her. And I think that's something that we should remember, in healthcare, working with patients in, vulnerable times in their life, is that something that we do just to be polite or in our routines can really affect someone's life. And so I just think that's, something that's kind of humbling. And Rachel also mentioned that to make life and also healthcare whole, there need to be people who respond to suffering. And I think that's, our role as, people who are called to healthcare in the medical field, that, we're responding to suffering, and having compassion on our patients, but that's something that we need to remember to do, because it's so easy to be swept up once we really start our careers in the busyness of the profession, that we need to stop and remember to be compassionate to our patients and respond to their suffering because it matters. And the last thing she mentioned during her talk that really struck me is she said that we've tried to improve life in the world and, also healthcare with technology, but the only way really to do that is by heart to heart. So what really differentiates the care that we give our patients is from us to our patient, not just the technology that we have to try to improve the care we provide. And lastly, moving on to the stories of blessing and care. To discover the hidden wholeness in our patients, I think the most important thing is to be open-minded, not to make assumptions about our patients or to think that we have them figured out, but to just look for the opportunity to listen to the stories of our patient, and we might learn something so much more about them and also have the opportunity to bless them. And so to develop an eye for this, I think, we need to, as I said, look for opportunities to bless them and to be receptive to blessings from our interactions with them. And so someone I think who has blessed me and prepared me for this is my dad. He's always been supportive of my aspirations for my career. And he's also someone who, is kind of a private person. But, certain times I've, just somehow given him the opportunity to share things about himself. And I learned, stories about his life or things about his life that I would never have known otherwise. And so I think that's something that I have learned, that if you give someone the opportunity to share about themselves, that you might learn, like Rachel did from her grandfather. And so that is maybe giving a blessing to them because they like sharing that, and also receiving a blessing from the person that's sharing their life stories with us. Okay, thank you.